Welcome to everyone who is joining this meeting. Yesterday, the focus was on implementation in the UNESCO member states, and today we want to change perspectives and have a look on the civil society. I'd just like to give you a brief overview of the program of today. After the brief introduction, check in now together. Also, we will have a brief introduction who's here in the room, so make yourself ready. Then we will have 4 different reports from 4 different countries. We're having very exciting speakers here. I'm like to welcome them very warmly at this moment. And after listening to the reports, then we will engage in small group discussion around each speaker. We will also like to give you the opportunity to have really direct exchange and networking this time. And after this, we will come back together in the plenary to share what were the hot topics in the group, just to get some flashlight impression, not a complete full recording, but just some impressions. And after that, and finally, we will hear a keynote, the keynote Think Ahead, Education Today, by Felipe Urbas. And I just like to mention yesterday, who has been joining the meeting yesterday, remembers probably that the topic of youth and the group of youth is a very relevant group. So stay tuned, and I'm already looking also forward to the keynote at the end of the day, and we will close today at 5 p.m. I like to check in with you now, with all the participants here in the room. Now we jump to our topic, the role of civil society organizations. And as we've heard yesterday, so the reality is quite different. And also the role of civil society is spanning from filling the gap and deliver really specific non-formal education and concrete solutions. Also in other areas, it was being a strong voice of the political arena, while in other areas this was not so much welcome. It was also mentioned that CSO are, for example, enhancing connectivity in the society. They involve different parts of society and also different types of knowledge. For example, it was shared this example of Repair Cafe, which is also a specific type of sharing, of learning and sharing knowledge. And again, also used as a new actor, which is not as organized in civil society organizations as we might have known in the past. So these were some of the aspects that have been raised yesterday during the discussion on the role of civil society. But now we really like to focus, and I'm quite curious to hear now from the different countries we are having invited. So let's move to the reports from the 4 countries, and I like just to explain a little bit how this session is going to be organized. We're having 4 country reports, 4 country inputs. Each will be approximately up to 9 minutes. Many of them are also sharing a presentation, so to make it more easier for you to follow. And after this, after the presentations, which will altogether be approximately 40 minutes block, then we won't have a question and answer session in the plenary, but we will have breakout rooms. So 4 parallel rooms. Each speaker will be present in one of those rooms. And then there will be 30 minutes time for more informal interaction, discussion, networking around the country or the speaker, and not a very much formatted discussion. So this is just to be prepared for this, that after the presentations here in the plenary, we will provide these breakout rooms. So having said this, now I like to hand over to Juma Wasili and first welcome him very warmly. Juma Wasili, he's the co-founder of the Nyasa Rainbow Alliance, shortly NRA, which is an LGBTIQ-led human rights organization based in Malawi. And he's also a project manager for the Friends Circle in Hanover, which is a Germany-based organization in Malawi. He's advocating for equal and free education. So, and Juma, you will give us an overview or an insight on the role of CSO in ESD in Malawi. The floor is yours.
So Malawi, southern East Africa, is split by the Great Rift Valley and the famous Lake Malawi. It's one of the biggest lakes. I think number 3 in Africa. So Malawi has over 19 million people. That's according to World Bank in 2020. So the demographics in female population was reported at 50.6%. That was still in the same year, 2020. That's 9.7 million. So the male population is amounted to approximately 4.96 official language, and Chichewa is the national language, which is spoken widely in Malawi. Malawi has 10 major ethnic groups, which are historically associated with the modern, and each of them has its own language. So talking of Malawi's population context, it's largely youthful with 80% of its population aged below 35 and with a median of 17 years. So literacy figures in Malawi, according to recent UNESCO reports, an adult literacy of 62.14%, while the male literacy rate is at 69.75%. For females, it's at 55.2%. So this is okay. In continuing, despite numerous, all right, ESD opportunities. So the following are the opportunities which we hope, like we as stakeholders, we hope that this is where we can utilize. So first is the political will. It has proven that the stakeholders and civil society organizations have taken several strides to reaffirm their commitment towards inclusive and equitable quality education for all. So the second one is the launching of a development blueprint called Malawi 2063. So this is an ambitious roadmap which may guide Malawi on creating an inclusively wealth and self-reliant nation. The other one is increased funding to educational programs. The other one is promotion of research, science, technology, and innovation. The other one is education system. It has been redesigned to respond to the current needs of the curriculum and inclusion of all emerging issues in regards to the tenets of goal number 4 of sustainable development goals. So through all this, there are also challenges which we hope we are envisaging. So some of the challenges are as follows. So although lack of strong political will, which there has been little efforts from government side in adopting a clear pathway on the road to achieving this education for all, to achieving this strategy of education for all. And the second one is minority groups such as the LGBTIQ and key populations have been left out in program designing and subsequent implementation. This threatens to erode or to take away all the gains we have been registered both in education as well as equal provision of healthy services. The third one is the development. The development of the blueprint has not been customized, and there has been little or no effort in raising awareness to make sure that it trickles down to the last person in the remotest area. I mean, this is the underlying challenge in Malawi. That's when our policies have been developed, and yet the problem comes in like, how do we make this policy reach out to the last person? Like, for example, in the rural areas where they do not have even access to internet. This is coupled by expensive internet rates. Yeah. Next slide, where I'm continuing with challenges. So this is the continuation of challenges. So the last one is, despite the education sector taking a huge chunk of the national budget allocation, it remains one of the most underfunded and underperforming sectors. This is largely attributed by internal and underlying factors behind poor showing of education. So the problems are teachers remain the lowest paid civil servants in Malawi. That's true. And so just an example, most teachers in Malawi, they get less than 150 US dollars per month. So you can imagine a teacher with the whole week entrusted on her or him just earning certain amount. Also, they live in dilapidated government houses which are like 50 or 20 years ago, but they haven't yet been maintained. So these are also demotivating factors for a teacher to perform. So they are also not motivated by working conditions. So the working conditions remain poorly presented, as well as opportunities for professional development are not offered to them, because usually if a profession like this is quite demanding, so you always have to go continuous professional development. Yeah, next slide. I'm trying to make it quick so that I don't exhaust my 5 minutes. So excuse me for this. So these are the pathways, solutions suggested. So in order to make ESD a reality, the following are highly suggested. So number one is policy review on teachers' conditions of services. Number two is to align education curriculum to real global issues, i.e. climate change and SOGI, that's sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So it's also another factor which is most overlooked in designing all this education curriculum. Number three, design robust and resilient systems against corruption in the education sector. As we all know that corruption is like, if we manage to eliminate corruption, it's like half of Africa's or Malawi's problem are solved. Number four is we should invest more resources in education. Number five, we fight hunger in primary and secondary schools to reduce abscondment of classes and subsequent dropouts, as well as fighting malnutrition. This can be done by creating sustainable systems of mitigating hunger in drought-prone areas by using solar-powered water pumps and gardening and agriculture. So just to expand more on this is also one of the challenges which are facing in Malawi. Most kids don't attend schools just because they didn't eat. Most of them are coming from lower class families, the lowest class families, so they cannot even afford to be given something to eat. So if we invest in projects like this, okay, let's make gardening or agriculture to make it more sustainable, more resilient, so that the people's like an example is the project I was doing in Makanjira. This was a project which was aimed at creating a solution to hunger. So we have a greenhouse where we were planting vegetables and maize, so that children at a certain school where I'm working are able to harvest some of the use there, so that they can use to supplement to their nutrition wise. So the conclusion is education for sustainable development has the power to fuel socio-economic growth. That's for sure. In fact, we all have to pay attention to this one. So the world in general and Africa in particular should embrace and aggressively implement interventions aimed at ensuring quality education for all. No one should be left out behind if we are to make this dream come true. Thank you so much. In my local language, you say Zikomo Pambiri. Thank you so much, Laura, for the sharing.
Thank you very much, Juma, also for, I'm very glad we are having you here, and now we could follow much better, I think. So, and also with the help of your presentation, it was quite easy really to follow also and to get an insight also in the reality of education in Malawi. Thank you very much, and good for having you here. That we now move on with the program, and we will invite Dr. Malathi to step in. She has been prepared already for this. Dr. Malathi Santhanam, I'm very glad to have you with us. She's working for the Carl Kübel Foundation for Child and Family in India. And she has quite a huge professional portfolio from coaching civil society organizations and strengthening skills in community level, child protection policy, and also in designing and evaluating training modules, theory of change workshops, and very important, mentor global youth volunteers to strengthen mental health. And she's very much motivated to ensure that no one is left behind. So, Malathi, we are looking forward to your insights from India. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hannah and everyone. I'll just share the screen and I'll just start. Very good evening, good afternoon, late evening and early morning to everyone, and welcome to this particular session. I'm extremely delighted to be here with each one of you for this. And I'm standing before you because of my mentor, my parents, and my foundation, who enabled me to grow and sustain and build my resilience. When this was offered to me, I was thinking that to talk about the civil society organizations and to see what they contribute and what is ahead, I was just having plenty of information on hand. But I was just thinking, how about taking the views from different people? To start with, when I spoke to different categories of people, I asked them, what do you think about education for sustainable development and SDGs? Someone said, maybe a college student, he said that school alone is not the center of education. It is spread all over the society. A 7th grade student said that you should enable evenly distributed skills. Don't call it as equality or equity, evenly distributed skills. And likewise, someone said that by development, you should not make the rural into urban and make the urban into a rural, but see that wherever they are, the skill is transferred. The latest liberal education policy enables everyone to see that choose what you want, and that is what a teacher said that it is it. And Visionary said that asking the right question and power of listening is the best way of sustainable education too. A CBO member, she said, a community-based organization, federation member, self-help group member, she said, if you enhance humanity and inclusiveness, that is sustainable and more than enough. So that took me to a different recollection. Some 15 years before, when we were training community-based organization, self-help group women, there was a 20-year-old little vibrant woman sitting in my training hall, and in the midnight was copying whatever that was there in the flip chart. And when I went to just check what is happening, she said, I copy this. I don't know to read and write. I just copy like that. I go back and I will talk with the people who knows to read and write and get to know. I felt, my God, what is this? What are we doing? There began my lifestyle to change. How can I contribute for it? And today, those self-help group women are masters in various equipments, in various apps, and also attending my Zoom training and teaching me how to handle tablets. To start about what is happening in India, to begin with, you have data everywhere, and that is marvelous. You talk about any development issues, you have data for it. That is the marvelous development. And everybody is encouraged to contribute for it, and there is an opportunity to access. And the best part is there is government instituted bodies like statistical organization and monitoring units like Niti Aayog, who have classified the country's indices as the state as aspirants, performers, front runners, and achievers based on the scorecard. We find that today we are above 660, and they are able to, the beauty is they are able to lay the pathway of change, keeping the baseline data of the previous year, set the output for the next year, and project for the outcome. This is the first status which I find that is amazing. The second part in India is like that every panchayat, the local governing institutions, have an opportunity to participate in this SDGs in one form or the other. Maybe it is on health, or maybe it is called Swachh Bharat, or maybe it is clean water, hygiene and sanitation, girl-child protection, maternal health, environmental decade, whatever it is. When we speak about CSOs, what I feel is CSOs have been the biggest pillar of strength for everyone, because they are the persons who can take all stakes to the community, engage the community, and help everyone to reach the unreached. I feel that they have been instrumental in motivating the people to change their lifestyle, especially beyond the learning outcomes, which is categorized into 3. I see that the behavioral change is happening mostly because of CSOs in most of the communities and villages. The second part of contribution is on vocational skill building, where we find that today we want to come back to the system where the vocations, the indigenous art and culture is preserved and people are able to contribute. Through WealthWatch as a program which is promoted by the German government, you can see that the youth travel all over and they are able to exchange skills and practice. And so I see the commendable change in responsible consumption and protection mainly. There are lots of pedagogical tools developed by CBOs which are user-friendly, and no matter whether you're farmer, teacher, child carer, you're able to contribute for it. What is chalk for us today? We need to identify someone who is a local change agent. We have to nurture them. We have to make them participate in this process. We need to invest on research, on practical methodology to take it to every person, no matter whether they are in the age bracket of education or whether they are out of the institutions of education. And what I like very much is like, let us not give the map. Let us identify the compass of direction from the people, and we draw the map based on that and take them from that level. That is most important for me. And most importantly, I see that behavioral learning objectives of all sections of the people has to be focused in future. Cognitive development, somehow it happens by one's own efficiency. But I feel that behavioral change matters a lot. And how to bring all stakes into the accountability framework is the biggest challenge. Like yesterday, we discussed about who are the key players, who are the soft players, who are the power players. But everybody has equal accountability in making this planet survival easy for all species in the planet. And what I also see is data is collected, but are we also contributing for the data? Is it meaningful? Is it enabling and enhancing the relevance to make a policy? These are some of the challenges which is forward for us, and we have to look forward to see how to make this more meaningful. To sum up, for me, education for sustainable development is to educate and make people aware of how much of real issues like climate change is relevant for today, but not for tomorrow. So with these few words, I'm looking forward to your discussions and arguments in the other group work where we are going to meet. And I feel that this is a chance, golden opportunity where we all are well equipped to participate, contribute, exchange, and build a network. And looking forward to our meaningful exchanges. And thank you, interpreters. Thank you, participant as resource as participants who are here, and all my friends who have been here with us for learning journey. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Malathi. Yes, reactions will be very much welcomed. You see the emotional reactions. Thank you very much, and also sticking to the time and providing an inspiring input. Yeah, now I like to hand over to Andrea Lapegna. He's already getting ready. Andrea, he's the communication and campaign coordinator of the Lifelong Learning Platform. And this is an umbrella that gathers together, I think, 42 European organizations, and you're active in the field of education, training, and youth, and you're based in Belgium. And besides this, Andrea is also overseeing communication activities. He's also active in global citizen education, education for sustainable development, international migration phenomena, and African geopolitics. And I've also learned that he's a podcaster and a trade musician. Maybe you let us know what we can hear you beyond this meeting. So now, Andrea, the floor is yours, and you will report on the role of CSO in Europe.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and thank you very much for the nice introduction, although it will probably spoil a little bit of my presentation. Speaking of which, I will be sharing my screen. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I have the fascinating yet challenging task to explain a little bit the role of the EU and of European civil society in the implementation process of ESD for 2030. This is indeed challenging because the EU has a lot to say and to do about this, and so does European civil society. As you rightfully said, we are the Lifelong Learning Platform, so European Civil Society for Education. We are indeed based in Belgium, but we have a European vocation. We are an umbrella organization, and as you said, we were founded 16 years ago. We gather 42 European networks active in education and training. And what we really try to do with our activities is to voice citizens' concerns about education and training. We do reach out to a lot of stakeholders, and our basis is quite strong. If you think of European civil society somehow from the bottom up, from a local perspective up to some sort of umbrella network. So we like to think that we are that umbrella network that gathers them all, almost. So ESD for 2030, and why is this important for European civil society? Well, being active in education and training, and especially on lifelong learning, we value all sectors of education, be it formal education, non-formal or informal. And this is why this framework is very important for us, because it does recognize ESD as an holistic and transformative force. It encourages learning outside of formal schooling. It builds the capacity of educators and teachers. Here, all educators, no matter really the learning environment. This is something that we care very much about, because we feel that the potential of learning is not limited. It should not be limited to the classroom. Indeed, there are several studies that show how non-formal education methods are most effective to both build a change in behaviors that was also mentioned before me, but also to foster inclusive environments between, but not limited to, learners. This is why ESD for 2030 is also important, because it sets to empower youth and to really allow them to be active contributors to the policy-making processes around the world, and also focuses on sustainable development, but also on sustainability itself. I will spend a couple of minutes after to kind of tell you why this distinction is important to us. So what does the EU do? This is a very challenging exercise for me, because on the one side, the EU has the potential to do a lot. On the other side, it doesn't do enough. And of course, I'm no representative of the EU, so I'm not qualified to tell you everything that has been going on within the European institutions. It suffices to say that for us, the EU is a crucial actor for education for sustainable development, because it ensures adequate funding for both schools, teachers, and outside of schools programs. It supports the professional development of educators, and including the training courses that are needed in every profession. The EU does act as a hub. Well, it sets up different hubs for sharing innovative pedagogies and education practices and new pedagogies. And this is very important, especially because before me, we learned about national context within Europe. As you know, different countries have different systems and different practices. So sharing best and innovative ideas is something that is mostly needed in Europe. The EU sets to achieve policy coherence across different areas. We know that education for sustainable development is no silos and should not act in silos. We know that it's not only for education, it's not only for development, it's for everything in between and transversal to all those areas. And this is very important considering the patchy scenario of policy development in Europe. What are some barriers, some let's say crucial points that forbid EU from achieving this potential? Well, for us, there's first of all, I put it kind of last, but it's actually the most important in this slide. Education is not an EU competence. The European Union does not legislate on education, and its communications directives are not legally binding for member states. So whatever it is produced in Brussels may or may not be accepted by member states, and different programs can have different impacts. This is the biggest probably problem when it comes to ESD for us and to education and training in general in Europe. So member states have been investing in education, but the investment so far has been stagnating. This is true for the whole education systems and for pretty much all member states in Europe. Stagnating investment means that with inflation, it's actually a decreasing amount that is given to education systems year after year. And this definitely endangers the support to educators and teachers. It endangers policy consistency and coherence between educational policies, but also from one member state to another, but also within countries. And therefore, it is very difficult to embed those new practices and policies and pedagogies into curricula. The EU has also the very bad habit of developing a different lexicon. For instance, the EU does not speak about education for sustainable development because that's an international terminology, and that's quite bad. But also it talks about education for environmental sustainability as a synonym, which it's a bit confusing in itself, and it's also not the same thing to our understanding. So these are some of the barriers. What can we as civil society do in Europe when it comes to education for sustainable development? What we do as lifelong learning platform, we have extensive consultations in all the processes. We engage in a lot of lobbying and advocacy with European decision makers, and we have structured dialogues both between decision makers and with our own members. So we ensure that there's a bi-directional kind of flow of information to help shape European policies on ESD. We really would like to see ESD as a way to build sustainable and resilient education systems and not narrow it down to serve the purpose of development or environmental purposes. For us, this distinction is important because sustainable development might recall ancient dynamics, might recall only economic growth. For us, the sustainability of education systems is much more than that. It's the sustainability of pedagogies, it's the sustainability of curricula, it's the idea that we need to change the behavior of learners and educators, it's the idea that also they are stable when it comes to funding, both for the working conditions of educators, but also the infrastructures or digital infrastructures of schools that are in dire need for funding. So really this in the inputs that we provided in this nice exercise prior to this event, we hold that learners everywhere should be equipped with skills and knowledge and be able to exercise critical thinking to live in tune with the society, environment, and the planet. And should eventually decide on their own development goals according to this balance. This is important. Development goals should not be overimposed by whatever authority or entity there is out there. And to conclude, so the next steps when it comes to the EU and our advocacy activity, well, the Green Dimension is now part of the European Education Area, which is this big plan to create an education area between European countries. A set of recommendations on education for environmental sustainability is seeing the light very soon. We have contributed extensively to this process, hopefully. Our contribution will be taken into account. Who knows? We'll see. And those policy documents align very well with the ESD for 2030 roadmap. There is a lot of commitment from the EU towards policy coherence, towards educators, towards pedagogists, towards civil society actors, because let's not forget it, we're here to make the world a little bit better. We'll see how this commitment will turn out to be. I hope I have not exceeded my 9 minutes, even though I think so. I thank you very much for this, and I look forward to the discussion in the small groups.
Thank you very much, Andrea. It was just to the point. Thank you very much for such a broad topic. Definitely not an easy task. And also, I think, again, a lot of food for thought and for discussion around how CSO then also can interact with Europe here. So good to have you here also later in the breakout room. Thank you very much. And now, so our last report will be from, I just have looked to Lara, he's here, from Jorge. He is the president of the educational corporation COIAM. Before that, he was 4 years the president of a corporation on savings and credit, which give access to financing to the inhabitants of the Mapuche area in Chile. So he's engaged in the Mapuche area, and he's master in education, and he's also member of the group Learn to Change in Hanover. And here now we see Jorge, and he will give us a report on Chile and his area, and we are looking forward to your perspective, Jorge.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for this invitation. Talk about my point of view. My point of view is the point of view of Mapuche people, not the government point of view. And we can hear in this slide people who work for dialogue, with the government, Mapuche people who create a manifestation day by day. Sustainability is a question. Ideas are supported, process are sustained. In this, we can see the map, historic territory of Mapuche people. If you look at the corner, superior corner, you see the South America, and in both our territory was be usurped by the Argentinian and Chilean people. Yes, is the 29th century military occupation of Wellmapu. And the mother father herd is not considered as a subject of rights. The dignity of the human being gives birth to human rights. The life of native trees, medicinal plants, and all biodiversity, the rights of the mother father herd are born. This is a different slide. Action for we today is more necessary than ever. Today, not tomorrow. The change we need as opponent in those we privilege their profit over global good living. Today we need agroecological reform, food sovereignty. International organizations give money to the government of rich men to money. The money doesn't not reach the real beneficiaries. It stays in tax havens. The millionaires hide the money and generate crises to then do big business, capitalism of disaster. That's Mapuche movement in 21st century. The people can wait. The people can uh, wait more because we need create a new voice. We need create a new rights of motherhood. What is our meeting request in Timucuicui? Timucuicui is a place where the police kill young people. Demilitarization of Wal Mapuche, restitution of territory, self-determination Mapuche, historical clarification commission Mapuche. Here we stay in the school, Koyam, with Christian Halbach and the embassy of Germany. Smiling faces, good, nice people, but never happened. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. The answer from state is militarization of Wellmapo. We have a responsibility to save those trees and plant them where there is imbalance, achieving good living. We need native trees to grow free from the shadows of money. Rich men hide the money, but rich men cannot hide the trees. If we hide the trees, we have a big problem. Actions against the savage capitalism. In the first part, can be realized without money, with our key willingness to replenish native trees species is called a seed of solidarity. This is work today that we have put planting trees in the rural area to achieve a better life. We opposite this state terrorism versus organic smile from our students. We put not only trees, we put organic fruit and try to help our students because they have many hungry today with this pandemic moment. Our proposal in Koyam School is obviously not only planting tree and organic fruit. We have a big work with eco work. For example, the plastic is a big problem here and around the world. We try to teach the children how we can make a difference. And in the economical proposal, we have the cooperativism. Kumimangan is a bank of Mapuche people. We start in this project. I start in this project, but nowadays actually I stay in the teaching in the rural area with Mapuche people. Our project is look more the native native needs and today we need that the rich man open the gates of the spaces, forest spaces, because we need to take the trees from the darkness of the morning and put in the sun for recreate a new forest. Thank you very much, and a big, huge for Sarah, Gabby, Sylvia from Learn to Change. Is my organization too. Learn to Change. I can't find the logo, but Learn to Change is my home too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for this insight also, and it reminds me very much now what we've been sharing yesterday also. So that what is relevant education depends very much also on the context and the specific reality. And I think this was also again a very impressive example of a very specific reality and challenges, and how education and schools can contribute in this context. Thank you really very much. And yeah, I think there's also great for having you here with us, and also now for a little bit further informal exchange afterwards. Yeah, as I've announced before these reports, or maybe just one word with respect to reports. I've learned from Lara that more reports from civil society organizations would be warmly welcome. So I think the collection of all the reports that are already at hand has been distributed also among you, but you're all also invited. If you like to contribute, then please approach to Lara. It will be highly appreciated also to collect more voices and more reports from civil society organizations' perspective. And again, thanks very much for all those who have contributed so far and also having shared it in this plenary.
I would like to report on the breakout session that we had. Despite the name, the conversation was very smooth and very informal, as I think was the intention. For me, it's kind of hard to pinpoint a couple of messages because it really felt like a discussion that went with the flow, kind of train of thoughts and complete freedom. So it was very comfortable for me to stay in the debate and to bring forward some of the points. What we discussed was basically like creative and inclusive processes, how to take ESD further, and most of all, since it's the topic of today, what is the role of civil society in bringing ESD forward with the horizon of 2030 in mind, and a number of processes were suggested, such as raising awareness, mainstreaming across curricula, funding opportunities, working conditions of teachers and educators, basically building capacity through funding by even employing more people, and revisit a little bit this false dichotomy between classroom and outside of school. These were all things that were discussed, and I was very happy with the participants because they were coming from different sectors, so they could all bring in a different yet consonant and harmonized perspective.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Andrea, for sharing, getting us a flavor of the atmosphere and also the content in your group. Yeah, Malathi, I see you. Yeah. So.
Thank you so much for this idea, because it really was like an ice-breaking session where we can just openly, without any formality, just exchange what we feel and correct ourselves. That was really good for us in the group. I second Andrea's earlier comments. Yes, one of the key issue was education out of the school and for everyone, not only for school goers, was one of the topic in our group. And another interesting point was, can we talk about education without talking about politics and without talking about economics and other aspects? Is it possible? That was one point of debate which we had in our group. Next one was from the rights perspective. We started discussing how to emphasize this right to education all over the globe, and how to ensure that the child is given the fundamental right of education for them. Of course, we also had a very interesting observation that whatever that we are talking under the SDG, ESD, the quality of education, nowhere it is existing. So where are we to find this? We have to just do a patchy work from here and there and borrow from someone, take that small tool here, this philosophy, and we have to just make a collage. And that is what we were thinking, that where is this ready-made? It is not ready-made. It has to be evolved. So that was one insight which came up in the process of discussion. And we also discussed about globalization to localization and which cost what and how far it is making a difference. And so we ended up in also finding out whether our intervention is bringing any impact on the education or the acquired skills of the individual. It was very difficult. We found one interesting research from the group where they said that after 1 year of their intervention, they asked, was it because of us? They said no. So it is disappointing at one time, but at the other side, we also got to know by ourselves, the outcome is not because of us. It is by something else. So it was we all felt with my dues, with agreement with others, I would like to say, we all felt that we have started now. The first step is starting from here. Now we have to start again. What to do from here? So we didn't select any speakers or we didn't agree with it. These are some of our points which came up. Others from the team, please, if any valid point is missed out, please present it here. I welcome my team. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Malathi. Yes, that's good. If anything likes to be also completed or commented from your group, I just check, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So it seems that you have reported very well, Malathi, what you've been discussing and also struggling with. Yeah. Now, Lara, you're reporting also.
Yes, exactly. I was in the group with Juma, and we were discussing pretty much two aspects of ESD and the implementation and like the potentials which come with ESD. One was we got back to a topic we touched on yesterday already about like the difference between private and public funding of education, and how, of course, the ideal would be public funding of like the whole education system. However, in reality, that's often not the case. So there is a need to get in touch with private funding opportunities. However, it's really important to then teach them what actually quality education is about. And we had like two reports, one from Sri Lanka where there is public education, and one from then Malawi where there is primary education free, but everything what goes comes after primary education has to be paid by the parents, which is a problem. And then the other topic we talked about was about the capacity of young people in producing change and like social transformations. And Juma once again told us that there's a huge potential in Malawi because the number of young people in the population, the percentage of young people in the population is super high. However, it's a challenge to kind of use this potential because there's a huge need to empower young people, to show them that they can be politically active. A lot of them are not really motivated to go into politics because it's risky. There's no resources for that. And so it's a huge point to work on empowering young people to becoming politically active and participate. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've wrapped up from our session. But yeah, my team members can add on my report if they want to.
Jump in, also give reactions if you feel like, yeah, exactly. That is also supporting.
I am from Uganda, from East Africa, and I am a program coordinator for Weltweit program, from a volunteer Weltweit program based in Germany. And I don't know, I wasn't in the group, but I was keen listening to the group members giving their points. So my reaction towards the points and maybe my addition also to the points they are giving. First of all, if we are considering that SDG should be promoted, and now it is changed to the ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. We need to consider the mode, because in East Africa, let me say, there are so many gaps. There's still gap, a lot to fulfill, and even to understand what SDG is and what education for sustainability means. So if civil society organizations are trying to look forward to find a way of how to promote education for sustainability all over the world, which means the mode of transmission should be considered, and also how are they sure that the sustainable development goal is understood by all countries. Yeah, this is my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. And I can say that some of the issues you have been raised also have been discussed yesterday in the conversations were coming up, and how to link SDGs and ESD, and also to, so that's a big task to link also all these debates. Thank you very much for sharing. Thinking ahead, I think that's definitely very relevant for all of us now. And I'm very happy that I can introduce Felipe Urbas to you, who will give us this keynote. He's an activist from Argentina, right now working as the advocacy coordinator for the youth-led organization Transform Education, which is hosted by the UN Girls Education Initiative. And Felipe has also been working on advocating the SDGs on national and international scale for more than 6 years. And he's been the Latin America youth representative in the global campaign for education. And in your talk, I think you have been requested to share what are the challenges for the future from your perspective, and how education could address this or needs to address these challenges. So I think, Felipe, you're talking without slides, so the complete floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. How are you? First of all, I wanted to share an immense thank you to Benro for allowing me to share my thoughts in this amazing event as a keynote speaker. Also, a huge thanks to Hannah for such an amazing moderating in this space, and an immense admiration for all my fellow speakers. Juma in the situation on Malawi, Dr. Malathi that was in my group on how we're moving forward in India, Andrea Lapegna from Belgium, and of course, my region partner, Jorge, with the always interesting and many times worrying reality that my neighbors in Chile face. Thank you for taking us through the realities of education as part of sustainable development in your own particular context. It has been an amazing journey today. So exactly about what happened here today is what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to be talking about the right of education and about how through two particular paths, we can ensure that the road to a sustainable world is rooted and it emerges from a sustainable education. First, I wanted to start with a little presentation for those of you that don't know me. My name, as Hannah said, is Felipe Urbas Sinópoli. I'm 20 years old. I'm Argentinian. And as Hannah said, I've been working in education for more than 6 years. Right now, as well as an advocacy coordinator in Transform Education, I'm working in the Ministry of Education of the province of Buenos Aires. That, just so you know, the size of the province of Buenos Aires is around 2.5 times the size of England. So it's pretty big. And we're working in the Ministry of Education to create students' unions in all the schools of Buenos Aires. Interestingly, in Argentina, we have an immense history regarding students' union, and we have actually several laws that require all schools to have one. But I'm not gonna burden you with Argentinian law, educational law, maybe for another time. But I started in education when I was 14 years old. I was in my second year of high school, and I had only been there for 2 years, but I had already seen so many things that I wanted to change. The incredible amount of depersonalization that me and all my classmates felt and went through every day at my school just didn't sit right with me. Day in and day out, I felt like we were numbers in a spreadsheet, like we were students that were prepared to pass an exam in order to be accepted into society. And I felt like schools didn't prepare us for our lives, didn't think about our lives, our hobbies, our interests, our problems. Like, yeah, all we were was students. All our lives revolved around school. And keep in mind that I was going to an elite school, what it's known as an elite school in Argentina, probably the quote unquote best high school in Argentina. So I started to wonder, if this is the best, what's left for the rest of the schools? Reality actually shocked me more than I thought it would. In comparison with my 400-year-old school with marble walls and a world-renowned library, I found that the other schools have other problems. Ceilings falling on top of classrooms, rats in the bathrooms, and kids leaving schools to go to work because their family needed the money. It shocked me as a student, but it also shocked me as I tried to put myself into a teacher's shoes. How hard must it be to give a class on, I don't know, linear functions or ancient Egypt or any other topic when the reality outside that classroom where you're in is so bleak and discouraging? I wondered, at what point did we as a society decided education should exist in a bubble, should be separated from the context upon which it happens, and should be oblivious of all the external factors that determine its quality? Why don't we ask ourselves more often, why do we have every year more and more kids with social anxiety, depression, eating disorders, etc.? Or why don't we ask ourselves more often, why does every kid or teenager that has gone through school in the past 20 years remembers at least one time where they have cried because they felt they couldn't handle an exam, or because they were stressed about what their parents would say if they had a bad grade? I want to make one thing clear, and I've said this during my whole 6 years. I still remember my first speech where I said this exact thing. A good education should never make you want to cry. Never. It should never give you disorders because you don't think you're good enough. We talked about this in the breakout session. You should learn to enjoy education, not to suffer it. A good education should understand the different types of intelligence and the different paths towards learning that are specific to every person and their circumstances. I remember thinking about this speech that in Argentina we have a good quote, a catchphrase that we use to illustrate this, and it goes something like this. I once laughed while with my dad because I saw that a construction worker had written concrete with a K instead of a C. And he told me, he knows how to build a house. Do you? And I think that this illustrates perfectly how everyone learns their own way. Experience can also be knowledge, even though it isn't written in any textbooks. And education should be contextualized and should be a contextualized answer to the different worlds that everyone lives in, not a standardized response to an individualized reality. So before we start to dissect the first path of the two that I told you I was going to analyze on this speech, I wanted to go over the concept of the right of education, because it came up a lot during the discussion. and specifically the concept of the right of education as a human right, because I think that it's important in order to understand the significance for sustainable development. A few years ago in 2019, as Hannah said, I was working as the Latin American and Caribbean youth representative for the Global Education Campaign. And that year, as we did every year, we started working on the Global Action Week for Education, so 24th of March till the 1st of April. And we ended up with a catchphrase that I think sums it up perfectly, the concept of the right of education. It was my education, my right. And after the right, we chose to add an S, my rights. Why did we add that S? Because education has a particularity that separates itself from the other human rights. It's the only right that works as an expansive force. Education is the human right that allows you to fight for all the other ones. No one can fight for a right that they don't know they have. And there isn't, nor there will be, a stronger tool to allow that knowledge than education. I think that this is the historic battle that we're in right now. Education is the wood that makes the staircase for social mobility to happen. Pen and paper are the tools, the weaponry of the poor against the trampling of the rights. Exactly this is why we added the S, because education is not one right, it's all of them. Okay, I can talk about the right of education the whole day, but after this little interval that I wanted to explain, I want to go back to the paths to a sustainable education. So the first road, and I already spoiled the breakout room with a little bit of this, the first path that I think we need to have a conscious education and to think about education with the future in our sight is the contextualization of our educational systems. To explain a little bit better this idea, and also because I was a little bit jealous of the other speakers that got to talk about their countries, I want to go over what is the situation in Argentina, but understanding that what I'm going to talk about can be extrapolated to many other underdeveloped countries. In Argentina, we have one of the best literacy rates in the whole world. We actually rank 28th in the literacy ranking worldwide. We have 99% literacy. But one of the main reasons why we have such a high literacy rate is the same as to why we have one of the most worrying rates of school desertion in the whole world as well. Last year, around 800,000 kids started high school in Argentina. The high school system in Argentina, for those of you that don't know it, it's 5 years. You start it when you're around 12 to 13 years old, and you finish it at 18, 19. So 800,000 kids started last year. Only half of them will finish high school in the 5 years that it's stipulated to last. Let me repeat that so you can understand it. Of 800,000 kids that started high school in 2020, only 400,000 will finish it in time. Exactly half. Some, the luckiest ones, will continue with high school some years later in an adult high school completion center, and some will never finish. So let's get back. 99% literacy, but 50% high school finishing rate. Let that sink in. Now, I want to dive into why I said that those two numbers are related by their cause. Don't get me wrong, the public education system in Argentina is really good. And we have a free and of quality education. Actually, the University of Buenos Aires, that is a free and public university, ranked 69th worldwide and first in Iberoamerica. And that is free. So that is really good. But the problem is who reaches that level of education. Kids don't go to school to be prepared or to know how to read. In Argentina and many other underdeveloped countries, kids go to school to have a place to eat. Kids go to school because their parents need to go to work and they don't precisely work in an office job where they can take them. Or their parents don't have a job and the kids go to school to stay out of the streets. The importance of learning how to write or read takes a second place after the importance of staying alive. I talked before about the bleak and discouraging reality outside of the classrooms in the beginning of the presentation. This is what I meant. As a teacher, you find yourself in front of a classroom full of kids that the next day may not come back because their parents don't have the money to pay for the transport to take them to school. And I said that this was going to relate to the enormous and immensely worrying problem of high school desertion. So let's get back to the kids that we were talking about. Now, they're no longer kids. They're adolescents. They are 12 or 13 years old. And they have already seen their fair share of life outside school. They have probably seen hard drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, maybe even taken them. They've started to see their parents that seemed like superheroes when they were growing up, coming back from work tired, just going to sleep as soon as they come back because they have to wake up at 4 a.m. the next morning to go do the same day of work. Their parents start telling them that they have to help in the house, that they have to start helping bring food to the table for the brothers and sisters, that they have to go to work. So they do. They start working at a low-skill job, selling something on the subway or working at a fast food restaurant. And suddenly the situation gets worse, as it does in this kind of countries. Maybe the economy is not good, the prices are flying up. What you could buy the past month with a day's worth of pay, you cannot buy anymore. So they have to start working more and more and more. And from one day to another, they don't have more time to go to school. They don't have time to do the math assignment that they had to do last week or to read all the books that they are sent. They have faced reality, and the reality has told them that education isn't a priority anymore. Surviving is. And my question to us as civil society members and as people that are thinking about education constantly is, can we blame them? Can we blame them that they are deciding to leave school, that education isn't a priority when you don't have anything to eat? I don't think we can. So now we have to discuss how we can solve this dire situation that is repeated across so many underdeveloped countries. How can we solve this? I think that by acknowledging it. As I said before, the idea that education should exist in a bubble is outdated. Education should be specific to the context upon which it takes place and should have a deep and meaningful relationship with the community that surrounds it. As long as the educational system continues to confuse the concept of equality with the idea of equity, education as a tool for sustainable development will be further and further away. Education is the big equalizer. We all know this. But because it teaches you what you should have, not because it pretends as if you already had it. It's illogical to pretend to teach the same to a kid that goes on vacation every 6 months to Europe because their parents are business people than teaching the same to the son of a daughter of a construction worker and a teacher who may not have anything to eat for the next morning. You cannot teach the same things. Different realities require different responses, and equality is not about giving everyone the same, but about making sure that everyone has the same amount of opportunities to achieve their dreams. Okay, so we talked about contextualization. Now, moving forward to the second path, to sustainable education. And for this path, I'd like to talk a little bit about why we are here, civil society participation, and participation in general. I truly and deeply believe that meaningful representations of all the participants of civil society is one of the main ways to move forward in education. Mainly the participation of the youth in the decision-making processes around education. And in our breakout room, we talked a lot about non-formal education and about adult education, and that has to be taken in mind as well. But since I'm 20 years old and I work on youth participation, I'm going to talk about youth participation mainly. The youth is the actor around which all of our education, or most of our education, formal education, revolves around. Most of the things that we do it to have a better education for the students. And even though I have said that experience is a way of intelligence, we have fallen too many times on the trap of believing that there is a direct correlation between these two concepts, or even worse, that there is a direct correlation between experience and capacity. Someone can be inexperienced, someone can be young and be able to make better decisions for the students and for the youth than anyone else, because they are living it right now. Direct and vivid experience can be so valuable for sustainable education and sustainable development in general. I don't think that there is a possibility of having a sustainable future in any regard without having youth actively engaged in the spaces that decide how education will look like. It's also important to understand, and here's where I connect this point to the last one I talked about, contextualization, that part of the problem here is that we still believe that all the people that don't go to school are just numbers. We don't try to visualize many times how many people are those 263 million kids that are out of school today. 263 million people. In Argentina, we're 45 million. So we could have more than 4.5 Argentinas full of kids without schooling. That is one of the main problems. And I like to think that the only ones that can interpolate the problem of schooling directly are the youth that may be in the same context as those that are not going to school, but that are actually in the educational system. When you are in the educational system, you can help those that are not. And many times the youth that is out of the schools can be more fearful of the people that are in and the youth that are in. Policy doesn't always mean reality. How many countries in the world have education as an obligatory demand of the parents? Almost all of them. I think only one country in the world isn't part of the Convention of Kids' Rights, Kids and Adolescents' Rights. Only one country. In that convention, it says that education is a demand for all countries. Human right, basic human right. That hasn't translated into reality at all. We still have so many people out of schools, and we need to understand that the group of people that are designed to interpolate those are the kids, is the youth in the decision-making spaces that are able to attack that problem. To round things up, I believe that a sustainable future cannot be achieved without a sustainable education, and a sustainable education cannot be achieved without understanding the context upon which it happens, and how do the global problems that many times seem so far away from the reality in the ground are represented particularly in each country. Globalization has brought us all together and has many, many benefits. This event is due to globalization in part, but we cannot mistake globalization with equality of realities. Until we're all on the same page in terms of inequality, and we all have our basic needs met, we cannot provide global solutions to specific problems. And on the other hand, there's no one better than the youth to let us know how to provide the best type of education for their own realities. No one knows better how they are than the youth themselves. We need to contextualize and include in order to achieve a brighter future. Everyone lives in a world of their own. Everyone experiences life through a different lens, and education has to reflect this in order to succeed in our mission to have a quality education for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felipe. This was very impressive to listening to you. And at the same time, while I was listening to you, I had a look on the workshop program for tomorrow, and I felt exactly also what you've been sharing about the importance of youth participating is the topic of one of the workshops tomorrow. And I think you really made the relevance, one of these relevances very, very clear. Thank you very much also for this. There were no specific comments or, no questions in the chat, but lots of appreciation for what you've been sharing. So, and I think many of those who are listening right now, or maybe later on the recording, will I think can link very much with what you have been sharing. Thanks very much. Now my role is basically to give an outlook on the next day. There are three, I think, even now after listening to Felipe, even more relevant, at least for me, more relevant workshops that are offered tomorrow. And I start with the third one that I have already mentioned, which is about participation of children and youth. Here you will get an insight on project, the Dialogue Works project that is offering approaches to enhance children's and youth participation and decision-making. So the workshop facilitator will be Elke Weiser from Berlin, and you get input and discussion from Lea Kulakor and Laura Goldschmidt from Kindernothilfe and Project Dialogue Works. So this is hands-on exchange and input on how youth participation and children's participation can be enhanced. The second workshop, Transformative Education for Global Change, Changing Narratives. Here it's about, not so much focusing on what needs to be changed, but rather what can be done. And I think it's also mirroring a little bit what Felipe has been sharing. It's that it's relevant also that education is linked to goals that can be achieved. And here, workshop facilitator is Viveka Yani from India and Mirja Bukbesh from Germany. There will be also concepts like the whole institution approach and handprint examples for changing the narrative and make it more appropriate, maybe also more fitting into a specific contexts, as has been discussed in during the last 2 days in several occasions. And the first workshop is on international cooperations for a post-colonial education for sustainable development. First asking, why do we need post-colonial approaches? I assume that many of you can answer the question very soon with yes. And the workshop will provide also a specific methodology which has been developed by the Gesturing Towards Decolonial Futures Collective. And I will provide space for reflecting and learning about it. The workshop facilitator is Teresa Diakova from the Gesturing Towards Decolonial Futures Collective. And I assume that this is also a very relevant and interesting workshop. Thank you all very much. Thank you all the input givers, all those who are giving a report, sharing questions, sharing insights, and also definitely also to Felipe for this wonderful keynote that you gave us at the end of this day.